6 years. I've been called a pastor here for 6 years. And this past Sunday, I shared in my sermon some of the joys it has been to be a pastor here. And through all of the challenges, again and again, you've been wonderful as a congregation. But more importantly, God has been faithful. And so it's beautiful to be here. I acknowledge, though, in my sermon that as we move ahead, we're going to face some challenges. And the biggest challenge is that in our country, in the last probably 20 years, this was accelerated during COVID, but probably between 60 and 75 million Americans stepped out of church participation. Think about that. 60 to 70 million Americans who were part of churches 20 to 25 years ago are no longer meaningfully part of a religious community today. And so as we move ahead being a church, we're going to have to think about and really live into a world in which we can't just expect people to come to us who sort of know what church, like how we do church, is going to look like. Well, what does that mean for us? Well, it might mean some really small things. Like on Sunday, we had the lovely hymn, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing, kind of a timeless hymn. It can be played on organ, piano, guitar, violin, flute, many instruments. But in the second verse, there's a word, Ebenezer, that's really an ancient Hebrew word that obviously not a lot of people know what it means. And so in the service, I explained that before we sang the hymn. It could be lots of other things. Maybe it's about teaching people how to pray through a prayer labyrinth. Maybe it's we need to add another service to accommodate for the growth, or to reach out to a new group of people. I'm not exactly sure what it looks like. I know that it involves prayer and Jesus and communion and baptism and so forth. But again, what it all exactly entails for us, I think really remains part of the mysterious future that God is calling us into. And so on Sunday, I really wanted to start a conversation that I know is going to be quite intense this spring, but I think last for some time, of what does it mean for us to be church in an increasingly unchurched world. I think as a church, we're healthy enough, and God is certainly faithful in a way that here I think we can be that kind of church that can draw on the traditions and what's meaningful from St. Paul, our biblical roots, yet find new ways to connect and to reach out, as we have been doing, and again, as we're called to keep doing. If this conversation about what it means for us to be the church moving forward in an increasingly unchurched world, if that's a conversation that interests you, I would invite you to sign up for one of our small groups. They're just going to meet once in late April and early May. They're in people's homes or at the church or on Zoom. And just to share your thoughts and be part of this conversation about where we are as a church, how God has been faithful, and maybe, just maybe, where God is calling us forward. You can sign up in the narthex, which may also be kind of a fancy church word that not everybody knows what it means. That's the sort of the hallway before the church. You can also sign up online, and there's a link in the comments. Again, thank you for your just being an awesome church, and that each week we get to gather and celebrate that God is faithful. And may we continue to discern ways that people who haven't grown up in this tradition can find a way to find meaning, joy, and peace, the kingdom of God in our midst here together.